I've interned at a Fortune 500 company, and I know that there is a lot of politics. Just because you're great at a skill, just because you're really good at what you do, I think, there's a lot more that goes into that.
The reason why I emphasize skills is it's easier to play the politics, so to speak, if you're actually a skilled individual. Okay.
Right.
Certainly we all have run into that situation where you feel like somebody less capable is moving ahead and getting noticed. I'm doing all the work and I'm not getting noticed. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I think that comes down to is it's a lot harder for introverts. I grew up a software engineer. I mean, that's how I started my career. I'm actually an introvert by nature, right? I'm not the guy that shows up at a party and I attract a crowd and I'm out there wowing them, right? Like, that's just not me. But what I've learned is what we often call politics is actually just, in simplified terms, how well we're able to develop our personal brand, right?
Right.
So whenever you are building your skill, whenever you are thinking about your career, you have to think about it with intent, right? So the first thing you do is, like I said, what's my skill? What's the value I can bring to the organization? Then the second thing is, now how do I get noticed? How do I attract attention, like good attention, right? And that's the whole playing the politics part, right? So a lot of people think like, oh, well, that's brown nosing and I'm never going to go and kiss ass. And it's like, well, not really, actually. So the way I eventually evolved, because I've made many mistakes in terms of my journey on getting attention, building influence, is to go and manage upwards, right? Like, make sure my manager knows what I'm doing, right? And I constantly be in front of him and get meetings. Like, that's part of it. But really what I found to be most successful, and it really took my, the attention that I was getting and building my brand the right way, was instead of doing that, it was looking at my peers and saying, if I'm truly good at what I'm doing, then I'm probably better than somebody else on the team. What can I do to help them? So this idea of servant leadership, which you hear about, that's what that is. It's how do I lead by helping someone else so that it's not just me that's shining, it's our entire team starts to shine, right? The overall team that you're a part of is starting to produce better, it's starting to look better. And so when you talk about politics, a lot of times that gets misinterpreted as, who is, more in favor with somebody else. There's some of that, don't get me wrong. But I think largely when I look back to my career that I wrote things off as it's just politics and I don't know how to play it, it really became more of, I was so focused on getting my boss's approval and his sign off. And what really helped me was when I started saying, I'm going to help this person get better. What happens is the voice for you as an individual gets louder and louder, right? People talk. They're going to say, hey, dude, Elvin really helped me out on this thing. If it wasn't for him, would have never made that deadline. He caught a critical bug before we went into production. It wasn't his code, but he took the time to come and help me out. And it's that kind of grassroots noise that bubbles up.
It just comes down to providing value for others. I mean, in all aspects of life, when you do something for someone else, it always comes back to you. And I think that's very important. You're giving
because if you have that, so if you have, the folks at your peer level, or if you even have some team members sort of saying and promoting you as a high value individual, a servant leader.
Right. That's how you rise up.
Exactly. You rise up, but at the same time you go to the top, right? And you're having your weekly one-on-ones. I always make sure that when I walk into an executive's office, I have my brag sheet mentally. Like, what did I accomplish this week? What did I accomplish this month? What did I accomplish this quarter? And I don't go out there and just start rattling it off, right? But I work it into a story, right? But equally important is also talking about, here are the things that I could have done better, right? Here are the things that I could have executed better. And here's how we're going to make sure it gets done better in the future. So I think if you think about your brag sheet and you think about your lessons learned and you're communicating with the executives, that authenticity comes out. And, I think in today's corporate culture, they're looking for people that can connect with people, and being authentic is one of those really important elements. So I try to have a very balanced story. I try to talk about what I've learned, what I wish I could have done better, but I know I will now going forward, along with accomplishments. So if you're kind of being promoted upward and you're kind of working top down at the same token, it's just natural that people are going to view you and your brand as a positive impact on the organization.
Right. It just comes to show how important building a personal brand is.
Exactly.
Most people, when they think of personal brand, they think of creating content on YouTube or Instagram, but that your personal brand is everywhere. It's who you are as a person. It's 24/7. You are constantly building your personal brand through interactions with people you meet. So it's just so important, like Andy said, to be authentic and just to be yourself at all times. because, personal branding is just so important now. There's the amount of distractions out there. In order to stand out, you need to have a strong personal brand.
Yeah. And you want that brand to represent something that your parents would be proud of. That's always how I thought about it, right? I want my wife to be proud of my personal brand. I want my parents to be proud of my personal brand. I want my kids to be proud of my personal brand, right? So what I think of is I calibrate with my team every once in a while, and I'll just say, so when you think of me, what's the first word that comes to mind, right? Mm-hmm. And if that first word isn't something around servant leadership, adding value, then I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And I go back and I hone my activities. I look at what am I doing that isn't sort of aligning my perception to the way I want it to be? What do I need to fix? What do I need to stop? What do I need to start doing? That's how your continuous improvement comes in to make sure your brand, your personal brand, aligns with where you want it to be.
Right. There you guys go. So Andy's just dropping a lot of good advice for the people that are working in the corporate environment to rise up, because I feel like, a lot of people end up like doing the same thing. They don't see a promotion for 10 years. They don't see a pay raise, or they might see a minuscule pay raise each year. And this is how you really truly like level up your salary, level up your impact, and level up everything, level up your teammates as well. This is how you do it, guys.
That's right. So I think of it this way, right? When you're starting out, you're just trying to affect the 24 inches around you, right? So that's your personal, individual skills. So make sure you're good at that. Right. But where you really start getting the bumps in income, where you really start getting the growth and responsibilities and viewed as a strong leader, is when you can grow your sphere of influence to be 3 feet wide, right? So now you got people saying, dude, this guy is really good. He's helped me out. He's helping the team. Your managers are looking at it and saying, gosh, I really can't lose this guy, right? Like if this guy or gal were to leave the company, we'd have a hole that we don't know how to fill. And then more importantly, the market, I think, is the best way to validate. Like as I've grown my career, early on, I didn't get a lot of headhunter calls. And I've went through the first.com, I went through a bunch of growth phases. We're currently in the second phase. When you're not getting headhunter calls from recruiters and stuff, that means something is off. Doesn't mean you go and chase every one of them. But if no one's knocking on the door saying, hey, we want your services, something is off. Because I can tell you now, like almost every day, I'm getting 1 or 2 calls from recruiters and headhunters saying, hey, would you like to talk? I have another opportunity for you that might be worth your while listening. So all of those are kind of signals from the marketplace telling you you're doing something right. And if you're hearing silence, then you really need to take a step back and look at it and say, what do I need to do to change that? And it's not going to a recruiter and saying, hey, here's my resume. They actually won't even pay attention to you. And that resume will get filed away along with 1,000 other folks, and you'll never get kind of the response you're looking for. You really need people to come and find you. And that can only happen if you're projecting the kind of brand that companies want. So I think it's really important that people understand that. But I just want to, again, cautionary tale, right? Don't focus so much on marketing something that isn't still solid. Like you got to build a solid skill set. You got to know where your value is. Then you take that to market.
Yeah, it's excellent advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I mean, that's just excellent advice for you guys that are just stuck in the corporate world. You want to level up. You want a promotion. Like just take that into heart. So hone your skills, and from there on, just like increase your impact, increase your influence.
That's right. And then I'll just leave one more little tidbit, and we can always get into this at a later time. Right. But eventually you will want to move into revenue impact. Right. And so I use that word and not sales, because I think sales a lot of times implies it's a transactional thing. But the reason why you want to start impacting revenue is you can then start putting yourself in a position where your income isn't based on just your base salary. Your base salary will always grow rapidly when you're younger. But as you get older, the amount that your base salary can grow is going to get more and more limited. Right. So what you want to do is you want to figure out a model that allows you to have what's called a variable income, a commission, a bonus. And the reason why those become much more scalable is you're going to get paid on results, not based on how many hours you put in a week. Did you come in and work, these many days, these many weeks, this many months? It's based on results. So as you grow your influence, as you grow your brand, you want to be able to impact revenue. And some of that might just be, hey, I'm an engineer, so I'm going to go help pitch deals, help win deals, and I'll make a bonus. And then if you can evolve, like I did, into facilitating the sale, then I start getting commissions on deals that I impact. right? And so that's the way that you really scale up your income. And if you sort of just rely on skills and leadership, you will grow your income. You will get to a point where you're comfortable, but to grow it more, to get to the same type of growth you had when you were in your earlier phases of your career, you got to get into this revenue impact side of things. So you have commissions and bonuses that you can rely on.
Right. So this is a lot of good knowledge, guys. A lot of good knowledge shows that you don't need to be an entrepreneur to be successful. You can be in the corporate world, and this is how you do it. I mean, Andy's a good example.
Yeah, I would just, last thing, go to Fortune, right? If you go to fortune.com and you look up entrepreneur versus employee, the statistics are pretty solid, right? You can't argue with them. Like the average employee will make more money than the entrepreneur over a lifetime.
Right.
If you think about, the current CEO of Google, the current CEO at Microsoft, right? The CEO of JP Morgan, $31 million a year. That's a pretty nice chunk of change, right?
Right.
They're all employees. They didn't found these companies. They weren't entrepreneurs, right? And there's many more examples of people making it big as quote unquote an employee than as an entrepreneur. So again, I think entrepreneurism is great. I sort of fancy myself a little bit as an entrepreneur because I've always taken, as you call it, the intrapreneur, right? How do I find something entrepreneurial to do? And this is actually what I'm doing at Nexian right now, right? To grow my entrepreneurial skills. So in any case, really think about, like, if your end goal is to make a lot of money, that, it's not necessarily entrepreneurism is the path. You can actually make a lot of money being an employee.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up that topic. So what does the next 3 to 5 years look like for you?
Well, yeah, thanks. Good question. So currently where we are with Nexian is when I joined 2 years ago, we were a pure engineering shop. So our model is 100% US based. So we went against the grain. We don't have anybody in India, China, the Philippines, even in Canada or in Mexico or Costa Rica. Like every person that works for our company, all 600, 700 people are based in the United States, doing hardcore development work. And what had happened was Nexian was growing to a point and they plateaued. And the reason why they plateaued was, if you think about what an engineering organization is, you got to hand the engineers what it is you need to build, and they go off and build it. And what I brought to the table was a couple of things. I brought thought leadership consulting. So what that means is a lot of times the customer will say, what do we need to do to innovate? Like competition is eating us.
What do we need to build?
What do we need to build, right? Are we building the right things? Are we spending money in the right way? Is our process and our methodology outdated? What sort of organizational changes do we need to make? What sorts of roadmaps do we need to, like, you can't just go and start building something, right? Like you got to figure out over the next 3 years, what are we going to build? How are we going to build? What are the dependencies? And so to enable that, we started offering what we call thought leadership consulting services. So we do business planning and road mapping. We do enterprise architecture. We do digital interactive. So that's bringing creative folks like user experience, visual designers. So that a lot of times us as engineers, like we're like, hey, the thing works, but like nobody wants to use it because nobody can figure out how to use it. And this is why you need that, digital agency type of talent to come in. And so it's on that basis alone that we were able to grow Nexian's revenue by 60% year over year. So at the end of 2018 compared to the end of 2017, we were able to turn our margin by 10%. So we were able to add 10% to our bottom line. And so we're going to continue to do that. And so my hope is in the next 3 to 5 years, we're able to grow our revenue to a point where, and this is every entrepreneur's dream, right? You're going to monetize, you're going to have an exit. And so that's the goal I'm trying to help with Nexian right now is how do I help Nexian get to the point where we can get an exit, right? Where somebody's going to say, we want to buy your company. And for everybody that's a shareholder or owns shares in Nexian, we're all going to walk away with a large chunk of money. So that's my goal. And that's really what I'm focused on today for Nexian.
Awesome. That's awesome. So before we wrap this up, what's one big takeaway you would have for young people? So people ages 18 to 30, what's one big thing, regardless of whether they're an entrepreneur or an employee, like what's one thing they need to do, take away from watching this podcast? Yeah.
So I think it's really applying some intelligence to filter out all the information that's coming inbound on your Instagram feed, on your Snapchat feed, and really hone in and be patient about building value. Like if you focus on how do I deliver value to my company, to my peers, to my team, versus how do I extract value from my time, I think you'll find that in the short term, it's going to feel like I'm giving, and I'm not seeing a much direct return. But if you patiently wait for the returns to come in, you're going to find that for every dollar that you invest, you're going to get $10 back, right? Just in the kind of an analogy term, but it takes time. So be patient, right? Don't let all the, pictures out there of, you're hanging out with girls in bikinis and riding around in Lamborghinis and all this other imagery that kind of portrays a lifestyle that makes it feel like you should be there. Know that that's the rare sort of outcome. And
Right.
the path that most people take is building value, building influence, getting into the sales game. And that's how they actually accumulate their wealth. And that, along that way, even when you're working within a company like I did, I've worked now for 4 companies. 3 out of those 4 companies, I took a very entrepreneurial pathway. So I'll wrap with, I'm in progress of taking my second company right now to a point where we can exit. The company right before this that I joined was a company called Aperio. They were a pure cloud consultancy that focused on Salesforce implementations. 13 months after I joined, in which I helped them sort of take more strategy and digital experience sort of consulting services to their hardcore Salesforce engineering services, they got bought out.
Right.
And I was only there for 13 months, but I can tell you the rush of waking up, looking on my bank account and seeing the amount of money that I had gotten from my stock options now becoming something real was amazing. And that's every entrepreneur's dream, right? Like you either get an IPO or you get acquired and you're able to cash out. And I was able to cash out. And so now I'm trying to kind of do it all over again with Nexian.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andy. I think you gave a lot of good advice for the viewers out here. I think there's a lot to be gained from watching this podcast, from watching this video. So thank you, Andy. And we'll see you guys in the next show.
All right. I appreciate it, Elvin. Thanks for your time, man.
All right. See you, Andy.
All right. Bye-bye.